So have you guys been hearing all the chatter about real estate? If you haven't, look something like this. Buyer's agents' commissions are going away. There will not be any more commission for the buyer's agent. And of course, oh no, it's the end of the buyer's agent. But let's just stop for a second. Now, before we get too hasty and we decide to throw all buyer's agents out the window and just let seller's agents handle it from here on out, let's take a quick history lesson of how the buyer's agent came to be and why. So prior to the early 90s, all real estate agents worked for the seller. And that means that even if you were working with a sub-agent who was helping you buy your house, that agent still worked for the seller and looked out for the seller's best interest. In 1992, there was a large class action lawsuit that changed the way that real estate was to be done. Sound familiar? So with the seller being the only one who was being legally represented and protected, as you can imagine, that came with all kinds of problems for the buyers who were getting taken advantage of, duped, hoodwinked even. The result of that class action lawsuit in 1992 is that the buyer's agency was created. And from that point forward, buyers were given equal protection in a real estate transaction. So if we got rid of all the buyer's agents today, wouldn't things just go back to that flawed way it was in the past? Well, not exactly. And I say not exactly because if you worked with a seller's agent today, they could represent both the buyer and the seller. It's called dual agency, and it's been around for a while. A lot of times dual agency works out just fine, especially if everyone is reasonable and honest, which we can always count on, right? Even though dual agency is really common and many times it works out fine, and I'm not trying to chase you away from that if that's what you want to do, but I am trying to draw attention to the fact that it does have its own drawbacks. So when you hire a realtor to represent you and you sign that contract, they owe you fiduciary duties. The top responsibility for a real estate agent is to put their client's best interest before anyone else's, and this includes their own best interest. So if a real estate agent is representing both the seller and the buyer, then they owe those fiduciary duties to both parties. And if your job as an agent is to put your client's best interest before anyone else's, can you really do that when you represent both parties? And if I'm representing just the buyer or just the seller, then I'm going to try to spill all the tea. I want them to know if I think that house isn't worth it. I want them to know if through my associates, I found out things about the buyer or the seller that would change my client's mind. And can I really be that honest if I represent both? I am not telling you that you should never work with a dual agent. Like I've mentioned, a lot of times it works out great. And sometimes it's even a benefit to you to work with a dual agent because a lot of dual agents are willing to lower their overall commission if they have both sides of the deal. But sometimes people are neither honest or reasonable, and that can put your dual agent in a dicey position, especially when it comes to negotiating effectively for your best interest. Having your own buyer's agent ensures that your agent is looking out for your best interest only, and is the best and only way to make sure you're getting the full spectrum of the fiduciary duties that are owed to you. So don't let sellers or their agents convince you that you don't need your own buyer's agent, especially if that's what you want. And I know things are hard out there for people trying to buy a house, so don't think I don't get that. And don't feel alone because this issue is extremely relevant right now. And contrary to what a lot of news stations are putting out there these days, this is not something that's going to help both buyers and sellers. In fact, this is something that's going to hit buyers pretty hard and become another hurdle they have to overcome. But even so, all hope is not lost. With so many buyers being affected by this new rule that sellers don't have to offer a commission to the buyer's agent, this is not only going to affect buyers, but it's going to affect sellers too. If the majority of sellers refuse to offer a commission to the buyer's agent, I see that having a huge impact. And I predict that price drops would soon follow. But more what I expect to see is more and more offers coming in from buyers that have contingencies or stipulations that the seller pay the buyer's agents, or more and more offers coming in where this buyer's agent's commission is wrapped up into the price that the buyer is offering to the seller. So keep your chin up, don't get pushed around, and call me if you don't want to make the biggest purchase of your life alone.